EDUTECH, the digital evolution of education technology.
This is EDUTECH, the digital evolution of education and technology. And I'd love to welcome to stage Troy Hector, the founder and CEO of Trident Digital Enterprise. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the audience afforded this afternoon. So given the time that I do have with you today, I want to take you through just my thoughts on education, technology, blockchain, Web3, and how particular technology is going to play a very, very fundamental role in the education space, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's internationally, and perhaps even the hybrid model of analog and digital. It is imperative that we do appreciate that education is a fundamental of most economies, most societies, and if there's anything wrong in that particular value chain, it could have an adverse impact on how your economy grows, how your society develops, and also how you compete internationally as well. So let me just start with a brief problem statement, and this is not the only statement that impacts education as a whole, but we do know for a fact that COVID-19, I think, was an experience that most in the world had not anticipated. There was speculations and talks about how governments could deal with it, but if anything, it showed the failures on policymakers, on regulators, and also as officials on dealing with this pandemic rather effectively. The greatest impact really was on the education sector. Of course, it was cross-industry, across the globe, in many, many spheres in one form or the other. But education was severely, very battered during the COVID period, 2020, 21, and perhaps leading up to 2022. To have children, school-going children, out of the classroom for a period of a year and more was catastrophic in terms of their own personal development and growth, and they were kept behind in terms of their own education. The question is, should, and God forbid, it does happen again, what are we planning to do from an education standpoint? And I believe that technology, or digital technologies per se, can play a very, very fundamental role in possibly and potentially addressing this particular problem. So let me try and just start with the context of what makes up an EDUTECH solution, just to kind of position it. And there are some benefits, but there's also some negativities associated with it as well. It is imperative that we try and get the content in a digital format, which can be consumed anywhere, anyhow, and anytime. So whether it's a mobile tablet device, a mobile device, or even a desktop computer, it's imperative that the content is in a digital format. The second thing, there has to be some tools for the teacher in the classroom, learner management systems, that allows the teacher to administer the classroom in a very, very effective and very, very efficient manner as well. So the classroom management component is also critically important in an EDUTECH context. The third component is cloud technologies are going to play a fundamental role. Now, as we know, most schools typically do not have large IT departments. It's typically the maths teacher or the geography teacher that is playing part-time IT manager but full-time teacher at the end of the day as well. So outsourcing those technologies and service into a cloud-based architecture is fundamentally important, and it does not make commercial or technical sense to actually try and have your own IT infrastructure on campus. Connectivity. This is a fundamental challenge, particularly in the African context. In the developed world, probably a lot better off in terms of connectivity, but in terms of being able to consume the benefits of an EDUTECH solution, connectivity is the fundamental pinning to make that solution happen. Without connectivity, whether it's fiber, whether it's ADSL, whether it's LTE or 5G coming in the future, an EDUTECH solution cannot work at all. People take it for granted that accessing Wi-Fi is a means to an end, but typically what happens behind the Wi-Fi infrastructure, people don't normally understand the connectivity components, the routers, the switches, the multiplexers that takes place as well. So connectivity is fundamentally important. And then lastly, the devices, the smart devices. The smart devices need to be interconnected to your fiber connection, accessing your cloud, being authenticated by your classroom management system, and providing the student and the teacher access to a digital content. Now, this by no means is the panacea for every EDUTECH solution, but it just gives you the context of the fundamental building blocks for EDUTECH solution in the fourth industrial revolution. This, of course, also is a challenge in most cases, because in some cases there's no electricity at schools, there's no connectivity at schools, no Wi-Fi, and also fundamentally important that the children in the classroom also does not have access to devices that provide the digital content. So once again, this is not the panacea of every problem or ail in the education segment, but I think it is one vision that we potentially could work to. Now let's talk about the fourth industrial revolution to see how this is going to impact on education going forward. So we start off with the first industrial revolution, talking about steam, water, where mechanical production now took over from animals being used as tools to do farming and doing hard labor in the market as a whole. It was also at the time that Gutenberg developed the printing press, and for the first time we saw the democratization of education. It was no longer just pinned to the aristocracy or the noble. Now the ordinary man in the street could also get access to education. Then we saw the invention of electricity and the light bulb, and suddenly from burning candles, we now had lamps, oil lamps start off, and then electricity lamps coming to the fore. But that effectively gave us a means to try and improve productivity, but also improve the way education is delivered in the marketplace. In the 1960s, we saw the emergence of computer technology coming to the fore, and we heard about things like transistors, microprocessors, capacitors. This effectively now will be becoming the new tools to effectively drive connectivity, drive consumption in the marketplace, also driving consumption in the education sector as a whole. And now we find ourselves in something called the fourth industrial revolution. An important point to note is that I've heard politicians in South Africa say that Africa missed out on the first industrial revolution. We missed out on the second industrial revolution, and we also missed out on the third industrial revolution. It is fundamentally important that we do not miss the opportunities that the fourth industrial revolution brings us at this stage. It is a case that this technology, this processes, this innovation will be globally accessible, and as South Africa, as Africa, we need to be ready to embrace those technologies going forward. So we've heard of things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, the Internet of Things, virtual reality, blockchain as being the new platform on which to conduct business as a whole. And fundamentally, these are tools in a commercial sense, in a personal sense, even in a parastatal sense that can be accessed, and it's how we put those technologies to use going forward in our necessary organizations, our businesses, and societies as a whole. So what are some of the applications that we could potentially look at when it comes to 4IR? Well, importantly, as you move into a more digital world, security is going to become fundamentally important. Whether it's your own personal data, whether it's your device, whether it's your organization, we're still seeing far too many breaches of personal data being lost by banks, insurance companies, even parastatals into the marketplace. So fortifying your data in a secure vault with necessary security protocols and authentication processes is fundamentally important. We're also seeing a very, very strong emergence in robotics. We're seeing now coming into the classrooms in terms of how students can utilize this information, this knowledge to build robots for the future. And not just in the industrial sense, even in Japan today, we're seeing robots becoming actually personal companions to the elderly and the infirmed in that part of the world as well. So there's a lot more to robot just in the mechanical industrial sense. There's also a personal element built into it as well. Nanotechnology has evolved at an exceptional pace, and in the field of medicine, in the field of retail, in the field of aviation, etc., we are going to see nanotechnology playing a fundamental role in our society going forward. It's imperative from an education standpoint that the devices that we bring into the marketplace today, a tablet, a laptop, a mobile device, effectively is agnostic to the infrastructure or the connectivity behind that. Ultimately, you want to ensure that the student, the teacher, can fundamentally get access anywhere, anyhow, and at any time. We're also now talking about X as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and we're going to get more of these X's coming through in future. What this is suggesting is that the people and the world at large is moving to a more utility-based offering rather than trying to do it themselves. So rather than building my own data center, I can, for example, log on to IBM or Google or Amazon, and I can get access to a professional suite of cloud-based solutions at this stage. Connectivity is going to play a fundamental role. In some parts of the world, it's far easier to access than in others. South Africa still remains a challenge from a bandwidth point of view, from a provisioning point of view, and even from a maintenance point of view at this stage. It's been reported that South Africa has still got the highest mobile data costs on the African continent in comparison to our peer countries on the continent as a whole. And that fundamentally has to change to ensure that there's a greater take-up of connectivity, both mobile and fixed on the African continent as a whole. 5G, I think, is going to be a game changer, depending on how mobile operators deploy this technology in the marketplace. It's certainly going to dispense with optic fiber to the home, and 5G on a mobile device where you can get in excess of 100 megabits per second is going to be ideally suited for a classroom situation. And you can envisage the context where a student doesn't physically have to be in the classroom right now. They could be any part of the country or city or even anywhere in the world. And so long as they've got access to 5G connectivity, it would be as if it's a symmetrical, real-time connectivity with the teacher in the classroom. So you take a number of these applications underpinned by Web3, underpinned by artificial intelligence, underpinned by technology such as blockchain, and you've got a very, very different model that you can take to marketplace when it comes to the education space. So what is important is that for teachers, for policymakers, regulators in the education space, this is an opportunity to rethink how education is delivered to society as a whole. I'm of the view that you can't think of the old analog model as it has been done previously. One of the challenges I envisage is that you're going to run out of capacity. You can only build so many classrooms. The population is increasing. You're going to run out of resources like teachers and desks and all the physical infrastructure. Digital technology has to be considered as an alternative. And I envisage through platforms like blockchain, whether it's an Ethereum blockchain or a Bitcoin blockchain, and utilizing tools like tokenization, that one day a child will be able to receive his or her education from anywhere in the world. So long as you've got a qualified teacher that knows what he or she is talking about, and they can, for example, cover things like calculus or engineering or something on history or literature, the child will have the discretion on how that can be done. Now, I know that is a very, very provocative statement. It doesn't fit in with the current education policy in South Africa, but I'm also suggesting that we need to think a bit broader than the current model and what tools are available going forward. A final comment to note is not really about the technology per se, as in terms of the definition of digital transformation, it's really about trying to understand what business model you create and how you deliver better value to your customers, to your stakeholders, and also to your own internal staff as well. And once you've understood what that technology business model needs to look like, the underpinnings then becomes a relatively easy task to fulfill. So you can come in with an underperforming or underpinning blockchain platform based on Ethereum, with tokenization based on the ERC 720 standard, or you could utilize things like virtual reality and create a real immersive experience utilizing those technologies going forward. So these are some of the suggestions that I'm offering that I think educators, policymakers, even parents need to consider in terms of how they're going to educate their children in future. That effectively concludes the presentation from my side. I'd be happy to take any further comment later on, but thank you for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it.